العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Ameen. Before we start with the presentation, some house rules to help us have a more organized session. First, to let everyone know कि हम इस meeting की video recording बना रहे हैं as well as AI transcription, which will be of course placed on our website in compliance with the requirements of the Pakistan Stock Exchange and the SECP. जो online participants हैं, of course उनको mute रखा जाएगा. Towards the end of the session, we will be unmuting those. Please feel free to raise your hands. Leave us any questions in the chat box. We've also received a lot of great questions online, which we will also be taking you through in the Q&A session. Uske alawa, of course, if you have any feedback for us, we've shared the QR code. It's over here on your screen, and of course will also be available once we place this PowerPoint online as well. So please feel free to leave us feedback about what you thought, how the session was, whether you liked it or not, and how it can be improved for the future. So without further ado, I'm going to be handing literally the baton over to our CEO, who will now take us through the presentation.
Assalamu alaikum ji. I'll just take you through briefly our story and our history and how we got here, and then I'll take you over the business overview, and then I'll hand over to Babar for the key financials, and then we'll stop for questions at the end. Starting off, I think you all know our story, but it's always good to revisit it. Our purpose is very clear, and our purpose is simply to deliver better everyday health with humanity. Our presence is, our head office is based in Karachi, and our factory is in Jamshoro. We only have one site, and the total number of employees that we employ is 451 people. Out of those, head office is 153, and the site is 298. And from a diversity perspective, 16% of our workforce is females and 84% is males. If you talk about all the board of directors and all the committees that we have, this is information that is available with you guys. It's also part of our annual report. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I think I want to also talk a bit on how we function as an organization. For all our products, raw materials and pack materials that come in, it comes into our site, which manufactures most of our products at the moment, and we continue to invest in it. At the same time, our partners majorly are through distributors and government institutions. So we sell through them, which allows us to go to all hospitals, clinics, and all pharmacies nationwide in Pakistan. And that is our primarily ways of distributing the products at the moment. If you talk about the business overview and going a bit into the details, starting off, I'm sure you guys have seen this journey, and I shared this in the last CBS also, on how we carry the power of three big consumer healthcare divisions of GSK, Novartis, and Pfizer combining together to form Haleon in a different timeline. But we have powerhouse of local and international brands under our umbrella, out of which a lot of brands have already been launched. And in the near future, we will be launching a lot more brands, which will add more value to us and the shareholders together. If you talk about our brand portfolio internally, we split it into two parts, FMCG and over-the-counter. FMCG is about 15% of our turnover, and over-the-counter is about 85%. Within FMCG, primarily we have two brands, Sensodyne and Parodontax, with Sensodyne being the bigger brand of the two and operating in toothpaste and toothbrushes, while Parodontax at the moment is only operating on toothpaste. When you talk about over-the-counter, we operate in subcategories between the four, which is nutrition and digestive, skin health, respiratory, and pain relief, out of which our two biggest categories are pain relief and nutrition and digestive. I don't think I need to introduce any one of the brands which are on the screen for you. These are one of the most well-known brands in the industry and in the consumers' minds as well. Also, on top of this, we've also added to the repertoire for the consumer and the experts where we've introduced new products over the years, but the significant one in the last 12 to 24 months has been the Panadol launch of Panadol Ultra, which is the first combination formulation that we put into the market. At the same time, we've extensively localized offerings for Sensodyne, and I'm happy to report that all the international formulations are available at the same quality in Pakistan today. And we also have been able to successfully localize the toothbrushes which were imported once. At the same time, we have Centrum, which we launched last year, which is doing really well. We have two variants in this, Centrum Adult and Centrum Silver 50 Plus at the moment. This product is imported from Italy. It is packed for Pakistan. And that is why we're able to offer it in a 30 tablet offering, which is very different from the market. But we will continue to see how in the future we go into the localization for Centrum. At the same time, as I said, our brands don't need an introduction. So if you see our top three brands, which are giving most of our turnover, we are number one across the board in the category. So if you talk about calcium supplementation, CSC, the number one prescribed brand there. When you talk about pharmaceutical, Panadol is the number one pharmaceutical brand in the industry. And when you talk about toothpaste, Sensodyne is the number one brand when it comes to sensitivity relief. So across the board, the brands which give us the top turnover are also the number one brands in the market. When you talk about beyond just pure business, there's a lot of work that we do on corporate social responsibility, and these are just some of the wins that we've done for the people of Pakistan and how we work. I think the most that I'm proud of is the partnership that we have with UNICEF on Mothers Matters, where we have successfully trained about 70,000 women on prenatal and then post-childbirth care for mothers. And that is something that we're doing in interior Punjab and Sindh. And I think this is one of the things that is closest to my heart. At the same time, from supporting local schools to visiting SOS villages, we continue to see how we can work with the underserved community. We provide clean and hygienic drinking water to the community within our Jamshoro facility. At the same time, we continue to support with meals to underserved children in Lahore. At the same time, I think sustainability is the way to go when it comes to a country like Pakistan. We're short on resources. We've invested very heavily in our solar energy regeneration over the last few years. And now we're up to 25% of contribution from solar. At the same time, we've worked heavily on carbon emission reduction. And you can see the numbers right there where we've drastically reduced our emissions. And also at the same time, one of the things that we see is that our reliance on water has come down. So overall water withdrawal has reduced from 54 to 20% in 2024-25. And the reason for this is that we understand that water is one of the most scarce resources in a country like Pakistan. And these are not the end of the projects. Of course, there are continuous projects that we continue doing on these things. And hopefully in the coming years, we'll see a lot more around sustainability that comes through. At the same time, I think I'm also very proud to share with you some of the awards that we've won over the years, be it marketing or be it other certifications. So on the left, you see two marketing awards that we've won on our big brands. At the same time, on the right, you see two certifications that we got. One was the True Platinum certification for waste management, which was the first ever Haleon site in Pakistan, in the world to get this. So Jamshoro has that flag. And at the same time, we also got the OICCI Climate Excellence Awards for 2025. We recently won some more awards in the last round of FEs, which are marketing awards. So, in the next CBS, maybe I'll share those in detail. Now on to key financials. I'll hand it over to Babar to take you through the key financials, and then hopefully we'll go into the question and answer session.
Thank you, Kavi. Good to talk to the forum. So this is a depiction of the phenomenal performance that Haleon, alhamdulillah, has been performing over the years. So as you can see in the chart, that from a revenue perspective, we've had a strong CAGR of 16% since 2018. I think that's a very phenomenal performance, which you would seldom see across the industry. Even last year, on such a big base, we were able to deliver a 16% revenue growth versus last year. And this is not only price increase. We've got almost a 9% price increase impact into this, and the rest 7% is volume driven, which also includes the new products that we are doing on the oral health. From an EPS perspective, again, I think it's we are very proud to call out that we were able to achieve 54.5% EPS for the year 2025, which is a very good 39% increase versus last year. So almost a 15 rupees increase on the earnings per share, which I think was something very good, mainly coming on the back of price increases and the favorable commodity prices that our teams were able to negotiate with the vendors. At the same time, I would also like to highlight the historical dividend per share. So we've always been a little conservative on the dividends, but for this year, for the last 2 years, I think the fraternity will appreciate that Haleon successfully today in the AGM had approved of 30 rupees final dividend, and that actually is a 55% payout ratio. Which is higher than last year, and I think resolves to the management that the management is ready to share the profits with the shareholders. So that's a quick upside depiction of our financials. If I go forward, this is the portfolio-wise net sales number, I think, which a lot of people online would be interested in. In total, Haleon grew by 16% in top line last year. Our OTC portfolio, which almost serves around 84% of the portfolio, grew around 16%. The FMCG portfolio, which is not subject to any kind of price regulation, grew by 38%. The tolling went down by around 50%, but that was kind of expected because we were doing tolling for the ex-Novartis legacy, which was supposed to carve out this year anyways. On the exports front, we were able to, the management was able to successfully export Lamisil to Philippines toward the end of 2025, and therefore delivered a good growth on that. So all in all, a good, outlook on the sales. I will move forward. So again, I think something that I talked 2 slides before as well. I think some good projection on the numbers. I think I will just focus on the gross margin and the profits on this slide. So our gross profit clocked in at around 17 billion rupees this year in 2025, which was up 31% versus last year. But more importantly, a plus 4.6% versus last year, which I think by any stretch of imagination is a very good performance, across the industry. On the expenses front, so this does not mean that the was not exercising discipline on the cost control. There was strong discipline on the cost control, and despite new products that were, driving spends to exercise consumption for the new products, our expenses grew by around 9%, and therefore the profit before tax, you would see, is growing a phenomenal 39%. So margin before tax is around 24.7%, again a plus 4% versus last year. And this all is on the back of some good working capital management. Our cash funds are around 400 million rupees above last year, and we're clocking at around 7 billion, which is very essential because we use this cash to help us negotiate with the vendors, especially in the given scenario this year with the geopolitical tensions. I think this is a good thing to have in hand and use it for our profit delivery in 2026. So for the interest of the forum, we also wanted to quickly discuss on the key challenges that the management is facing in Q1 2026 and something that we expect to come in the future months as well. So the 3 key elements that are something that the management is keeping a track of and taking actions to mitigate are we are having consumption pressure. We are clearly seeing the consumption pressure on the inflation levels. So the inflation levels already are clocking at around 7%. This is expected to go up considering the current fuel prices and all. We are focusing on driving consumption plans through marketing and trade investments so that we try and go ahead of the competition. On the rising fuel prices and the war surcharge that I think most of us are aware, almost 40% 50% is there increase in the fuel prices that we are getting. What our teams are actively doing is negotiating bulk shipping rates, optimizing the shipment consolidation, and proactively addressing inflationary pressures on workforce mobility so that we manage this. Plus, we are also managing our inventory levels so that we do not end up paying higher on the that we manage. From a raw material price inflation perspective, this is, I think, a fact that most of us are aware now, that most of the raw materials are having price inflations, not only from a freight perspective, but also from a cost of production perspective. So we are having the same pressures this year. But I think our good inventory levels, just in time inventory buying right now, I think is helping us to maintain this below the industry levels. So this was just a depiction of what the management is trying to do to help us navigate the current difficult situation that businesses are facing. Okay, that's it from my side.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kavi and Babar. We can start with the Q&A. Thank you to all of those people that are here online and who shared some very good questions with us. If you could just... So, with your permission, what I propose to do is that we cover all of the questions that have already been asked. And to all of those participants that are online, may I request you to just see, maybe perhaps your questions are already answered in advance. So moving on and asking the first question. This is regarding products or category-based questions. So what is the current mix of essential and non-essential products of the company?
So the share is 55 to 45%, and that is the share at the moment. And we'll see with the future launches, where does this go?
Thank you. Second question is, which product category is prioritized and planned for future launches? Clubbed together with, could you please provide information regarding any new products or categories that the company intends to launch?
So I think when I showed the categories and when you talk about the broad-based categories, so we have a very big focus on FMCG as well as the OTC portfolio. So you'll see net will be investing a lot in making sure these categories are growing. Within OTC, of course, what we do see is a big opportunity in the paint portfolio. We continue to see a huge opportunity in the VMS portfolio. And our recent launches also talk through the same. If you look at our recent launches, they've been in these categories. And in the future, I think I've shared this in the last ABS, there are multiple product categories that we're trying to enter within the same categories, and you'll hear more about them as soon as we get our registrations done in the future.
And what is the contribution in percentage terms of each of the categories?
So I think I spoke about this when I started the presentation, that our FMCG category is about 15% and the rest of it is 85% when it comes to OTC.
Any pipeline innovations or category expansions that can materially shift the growth trajectory?
So देखिए growth trajectory shift करने के लिए हमेशा मैं बात करता हूँ कि you need a sustainable growth at those platforms. I don't think you'll have any examples in the industry जहाँ पे एक launch हुई और एक साल में ही जो है ना आपका business double triple या इस तरह हो गया. And I think our categories, a lot of our categories are also very mature. At the moment, we are continuing to work on sustainable growth and sustainable value add on top of the growth that we're already giving. I don't think there's a magic wand to say, okay, we will be doubling growth in 1 year just because of one launch. That is also not a sustainable way to grow.
Why are there both imported and locally manufactured versions of the same product, such as Sensodyne? Is there a quality difference?
So ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल है. एक चीज मैं I think सबको बताना चाहूँगा is one के the good part about Haleon is that the product that is available locally in Pakistan, which is manufactured locally, is the same raw material and same quality as any other market in the world. So that's the great part. हम सारा Sensodyne अल्लाह का शुक्र है पिछले 2-3 साल में locally manufacturing पे ले जा चुके हैं. अगर आपको market में कोई Sensodyne मिल रहा है तो that is probably a great product जो great import हो रहा है, हम उसको नहीं import कर रहे.
Similar question, but regarding Centrum now. Is the Centrum in the local market produced locally or imported?
I spoke about this when I spoke about Centrum. Currently, at the moment, it is being manufactured in Italy and we are importing it. It is being manufactured for Pakistan. It is made with halal ingredients.
What is Centrum's projected market share by the end of the calendar year 2026, and when will local production start?
So we cannot share the exact market share, but I can tell you that we are hitting that ambition, and our ambition is to grow market share year on year, and that is what we continue to do. And the other part was on local production.
Yes.
So local production, of course, I think this is the conversation I did in the last CBS also, where currently the law doesn't allow you to produce nutraceuticals in the pharma facility. This is a conversation that we are already taking up with DRAP, and there is a headway in this conversation, and hopefully we have some good news in the coming months.
Thank you. Now, lots of really other good questions regarding volumes and financials, so I'll start off with those. What are this quarter's industry volumes, and are they expected to increase in the future?
So देखें जो इंडस्ट्री वॉल्यूम्स है अगर आप अभी तक डेटा देखें तो क्वार्टर क्या तो अभी तक डेटा नहीं आया फिर आपको फरवरी का डेटा है एंड व्हाट यू सी इज दैट द इंडस्ट्री इज अ बिट अंडर प्रेशर and that pressure comes from macroeconomic situations, border closures, and other avenues. And what you'll see is that this pressure hopefully will ease down in the coming months. I think with 2 months data, it's too soon to say where this year will end up. But the year has started off on a tougher side, and it will continue to be a tough year to manage.
What is the expected volumetric growth in the calendar year 2026?
Again, the category, of course, especially because it's a mature industry, it should the industry growth should be around the low single digits. It all depends on how the categories and bounce back, how the macro situation unfolds. At the same time, I think the other thing that's unfolding is the inflation on the consumer, and we've seen in the past when the inflation has been high, the volume goes down and the pricing goes up. And most of the growth comes from pricing. And hopefully that doesn't repeat and the government's able to keep the inflation in check. We've seen a decision by the State Bank to increase the policy rate by 100 bips. That is to keep the inflation in check. And if they're able to keep it under double digit, hopefully we are able to get volume growth out of the industry also.
Following a similar theme, then what volumetric growth is the management targeting for next year?
Again, our volume growth that we're targeting is a good, healthy growth on top of what we've already grown. So last year we grew by 7%, and we're trying to make sure that we're growing around the same lines. But again, as I said, it all depends on how the macroeconomic and the inflationary environment pans out and how the growth goes. At the end of the day, we will do what is the right thing to do in terms of looking at all the situation at hand.
So another question that's come through is that Haleon's major brands have all witnessed apparently a declining trend in volumes despite nominal price increases. How long do you expect the volume declining trend to continue?
So I don't understand this question because it actually, if you look at our data, it's not true. And I just mentioned that we were 7% volume growth last year also. So if it is talking about the recent trend, I've just spoken about the industry pressures that are there at the moment. But from a previous tenure perspective, I don't think that's the case. But if you go back a few more years, in 22, 23, when there was a macroeconomic crisis in Pakistan, at that time, the inflation was so high that across the board, it was majorly coming through pricing, and the consumer had to make a lot of choices.
Thank you. Could you also provide insight on the recent trends in API pricing? Additionally, how many days of inventory do you currently maintain for APIs and finished products respectively?
You want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, देखिए जी, the API prices are definitely under pressure right now, and they are inflating. जैसे I highlighted in the presentation as well. From an inventory perspective, our overall inventory is around 90 days at the end of this December, and what we've also done is to increase our inventory levels to cover for the increasing volume demands and the future price increases. So hopefully the management is trying to mitigate the price risks of the API on that.
And are there any anticipated price increases for medicines in the fiscal year 2027?
So again, the pricing strategy is clearly lined out by DRAP, and we follow that time. So there were pricing, i.e. for essential medicines, that will come when the fiscal year closes, and then they will issue the price increase notification, and then we take it accordingly to that.
And in terms of the rising of the crude oil prices, by what percentage has the company's API or raw material costs risen as a result of that? And what gross margin does the management anticipate going forward?
Okay, so I'll answer in reverse order. From a gross margin perspective, I think we clocked in around 40% in Q4. I think definitely the industry would be under pressure for at least the next 1 or 2 quarters. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to estimate how this will land. Because it all depends how the Middle East geopolitical tensions pan out. And if we do see a quick resolution, hopefully we should come back. If we don't, then the situation will be difficult. But yes, overall, this will be I think, a challenging year for the industry.
A sort of a related question, but does the management anticipate that the gross profit margin will remain within this 40 to 41% range?
From a long-term perspective, the commodity prices, if they don't increase disproportionately, I think this should be available. But however, given the current scenarios and the geopolitical tensions, I think in the short term, this will be difficult.
And what is the management's outlook on API prices for the next 6 months?
I think it's anybody's guess for now, because it all depends, as I said, on how the tensions pan out and how it evolves.
Other than paracetamol, are there other products also affected by rising oil prices materially? And if so, how much?
So yes, because देखिए fuel price increases से एक तो freight cost increase होती है, but also आपकी cost of production increase हो जाती है both locally and internationally. So paracetamol के अलावा paper पे, resins पे we've also seen an increase. How much is something that is a constantly moving number. But what we are trying to do is we try to keep some good levels of inventory at the start of the year. And for now, we are working with a just-in-time inventory scenario so that we wait for the situation to settle down and then we go back.
What measures have been taken by the management besides price increases to improve profitability?
Okay, so I think what we are also trying to do, as I mentioned in my cash flow assessment during the presentation, what we are also trying to do is use the cash that we have to negotiate with the vendors and see how we can manage the ever increasing freight costs, warehousing costs, and the material prices. I think that's something that is helping the management. Plus, I think also from an investment perspective, usage of the cash to get more return from investment scenarios. I think that's what the management is trying to do to increase profitability.
What plans are in place to mitigate pressures on sales volume after these set price increases?
I think we continue to re-look at our marketing and trade plans, and we continue to look at the investments that we're doing. And that is how, as a marketing company, we make sure that we go back to the consumers and continue to remind them and keep our products top of mind. And I think with this year's challenging environment, we continue to rework our plans every month to see what is the better fit and optimal fit to execute the market.
It appears that Haleon is overcapitalized. Wouldn't it be sensible to enhance the return on equity by utilizing the excess cash currently held? Is a question we've received.
And I think I've answered that in 2-3 questions previously as well. We are already doing that. And I think we're seeing some results as well. I think from an overcapitalized perspective, I'm not sure what exactly is meant. If that's share price, I think this needs to be compared to how our PE is evolving us and against the industry. I think we are pretty much there or thereabout, or actually a little slightly better. अगर आप हमारी EPS देखते हैं तो पिछले 4-5 सालों में it has grown by around 5 times. So I think that's the investor confidence that also we are seeing. So I think that's it's a reflection of the great results that we've been able to deliver.
There's been a lot of interest, of course, around what's happening in this particular part of the world, the geopolitical situation. And now I know that both of you have touched upon this, but what do you think has been the impact on generally the exports of the pharma sector due to these tensions?
Okay, I cannot talk about Haleon because our exports are Far East and North Africa, but I think we've seen in the newspapers how the border closure with one of the neighbors has impacted the local pharma industry. And if I remember the numbers, that there was a $200 million export to our neighboring country, which has been impacted for that. For the other exports which we do, for example, North Africa and the Southeast, of course, in the current scheme of things, there's a delay in shipments and all of that that's happening because of the closures across the board and that. Other than that, Haleon does not have a direct impact with the border closures across the.
And not even on the purchase of our APIs, because that's another question.
Again, purchase of our APIs may, again, the question mark, I think Babar ne answer already kar diya, is the fact that the pricing has gone up, because we all know that there is the cost of shipment has gone up. So there's an indirect impact. Even if the API doesn't move, the freight is increasing. So there is an impact across the board.
अच्छा, एक चीज मैं just highlight कर लूँ, just add on what Kavi has mentioned. From a supplies perspective, हमें supply के interruption इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं है, because most of our purchases are not from the Middle East, so we have limited impact. But of course, cost is something that is the whole industry is seeing.
I guess related question is, to what extent would currency volatility driven by geopolitical risks impact earnings?
I think we answer this in our annual report also, so you can always refer to that. We the risk factors when it comes to currency fluctuations.
And what contingency planning has been established for any escalation scenarios that may impact key markets, particularly with regard to potential supply chain disruption?
So I think that's a very good question. So I think in the last 3-4 years, and I say this constantly, Pakistan's supply chain has become very resilient. Because from 2022 import bans to 2023 import bans to other Red Sea crises that we've gone through, we have worked diligently to make sure that we have supplies across the board, from the eastern side to the western side. So in case a supply block comes through from the west, we're able to shift towards supply sources to the east. So there's a bit of mitigation that the management's put through on that. And I think this is the resilience that's been built up over the last 3-4 years. And I think this is the same resilience we carry forward to this year. Every year comes with a different challenge altogether. And as the challenges come up, we continue to build multiple other supply routes or suppliers to mitigate the risks.
So moving on now, there's been a lot of interest that's been expressed regarding the Jamshoro expansion project. The first question is, what is the progress, and when will commercial production start at this expanded portion of the site?
On the Jamshoro expansion, I think we are pretty much on track. We are almost 90% complete. Our go live date for Panadol regular is Q4 2026, and that is on track. Our next big milestone, as I presented in the AGM as well in the morning, is the DRAP approval. So hopefully we should get that, and by Q4 we should have the Panadol regular done with. What I also want to kind of highlight is, hopefully once the production is there, not only we do achieve sustainability, but also we have a good shaped tablet that you will see with a better formulation. So I think that's something that will also help us in future.
What level of cost savings can Haleon expect once this expansion becomes operational?
So एक बात बड़ी जरूरी है वो ये कि the expansion was not really addressed at cost efficiencies. It was more of a sustainability project. We were trying to sustain the production because currently we are operating through third parties. Once we have the expansion, हमें फायदा ये होगा कि we will have no supply interruptions, and that will help our sales. But what it will also help is we move from a 6 billion current capacity to a 9 billion, which then in future helps us from an export perspective. Having said that, still I think it's a cost favorable initiative, albeit a low single digit one. But I think in future, once we kick in with the efficiencies at the site and the exports, I think we should have a more favorable impact.
Are there any other upcoming capex plans for the next 2 to 5 years following the completion of this new expansion?
Yes, I think there are a lot of conversations around, as I said in the beginning, that new product lines into different categories of FMCG and OTC. And as those go through the approval processes, we will announce the capex when we're closer to time.
Thank you for sharing that. So now moving on towards exports or market expansion. So the first question is, please provide updates on exports to Afghanistan.
So we at the moment do not do any exports to Afghanistan. We have some exports to North Africa, and we've seen some exports to Far East. We have no exports to Afghanistan at the moment.
What plans does the company have for new market expansions?
So I think I spoke about this in the last CPS also. There are currently product registrations which are going on in about 18 to 20 markets. As you must be aware that this is a long process between 3 to 5 years, any new registration from a pharma category. As and when they come and unlock, we will announce those exports.
I know you've touched upon this question, this topic actually, but we still have that question and I'd be grateful if you could address it. What is the update on the same facility issue for both for pharmaceutical and nutraceuticals?
Yeah, I spoke about this earlier in this meeting only that there is some good headway that we've made with DRAP, and hopefully in the coming months we're able to share some good news. Fingers crossed on that.
Now, what are the company's plans for maintaining its listing on PSX?
I think this company is built for Pakistan, made for Pakistan, and there is all the reason for us to continue to list it. I don't understand why the question is even there.
Perhaps in view of the current climate that we see.
We're very much here to stay, and very much a publicly listed company for the future.
And what is your outlook for the financial year of 2026? Are there any chances of shares buyback or a stock split?
So if it's just one question and just leading to the share buyback and stock split, I don't think that is on the cards at the moment. If it is about the outlook, I think you shared about the macroeconomic outlook.
Thank you so much. I think now let's give a chance to the people that have raised their hands. So Sayyid Wajahat, you may unmute yourself. You should be able to unmute. Not, can we try to unmute them? Sayyid Wajahat Saab, can you hear us? I think maybe we can move on to the next person who's raised their hand, Mohammad Jasim Sahab.
I cannot unmute. Maybe you can ask them to write it on the chat if they're unable to.
Ji, bilkul. Please share your question on the chat if you're unable to unmute. Where you should have that option. Mohammad Jasim Saab, are you able to unmute yourself?
Just share his question in the chat box.
ठीक है. I'll just read out Wajahat Saab's question then. What were your volumes from toll manufacturing before expansion? Toll manufacturing margins paid to third party, regulated and unregulated Panadol sales mix are the three questions that he's asking.
जैसे मैंने बताया कि 6 billion की current capacity and hopefully when we move to Jamshoro it will be 9 billion. Margins are negotiated by the procurement and of course not publicly available. And sorry, what was the third one?
The regulated and unregulated Panadol sales mix.
हाँ जी, so जैसे कवि ने बताया कि essential portfolio हमारा 55% है और 45% हमारा non-essential है.
Thank you, Jay. Let's try to see if the next person can unmute themselves. Otherwise, I'll go to the other questions in the chat. Mohammad Jasim Saab, are you able to unmute yourself, please? Okay, I don't think so. So we can move on to the questions we've received in the chat. And I'm going to scroll up. Adil Saab is asking whether Sensodyne will also be manufactured in the new facility. You are doing toll of Sensodyne from Rumi, is the question that's been asked.
So at the moment, we will continue to manufacture Sensodyne at Rumi. As you're aware, that our facility in Jamshoro is a complete pharmaceutical facility.
Mohammad Imran Saab is asking what percentage of total sales do you expect to be derived from export over the next 5 years? Additionally, could you please share the key export markets being targeted as part of this growth strategy?
So I think from an export perspective, we want to significantly grow it and we want to reach, our internal ambition is to get to a 5% export base in the next 5 years. Unfortunately, as I said, that the export for pharmaceutical takes a longer time and it is not under our direct control because the importing country has to do the regulations, registrations, and then also the sites accordingly. So it is not something that is completely controlled. At the same time, from a country perspective, what we're eyeing at the moment today is all the African countries across the board and also Southeast Asia.
An API related question is, what is API import versus local contribution?
I think it's a 60 to 40% that we have.
Another interesting question by GRAP has recently out advertisement of big funds like Brufen, Panadol. How will this impact MNC brands?
This is a very good, I think, direction taken by DRAP is that जहाँ हम बात करते हैं self care की तो हमेशा ये बात कि self care is the reliance on our public healthcare system, and I know, as you're aware, that हमारा जो public healthcare system is under pressure, and as Haleon, that's what we also advocate. कि if you were to do your first intervention, which is self care on from over the counter drugs, you will reduce the reliance and the pressure on the healthcare system. I think this is a good direction, but I think it should help educate the consumer on how to do your first intervention. If you need to go when you become a bit more ill, is when you go to the hospital rather than going to the hospital on the first intervention.
Nasir Ravesh Saab is asking, what is the projected impact on the EPS with the increase in fuel prices and interest rate hike?
Again, I think Babar ने जो ये बात की थी शुरू में, it is too soon to see how the year pans out. At the same time, आपको अभी ये नहीं पता कि the macroeconomic situation, does it spill over to quarter 3, quarter 4, or does it continue to be here? I think we are putting all the mitigation actions in place to ensure that we're able to safeguard the PNL and the EPS eventually. But I think let's see how the quarter 2 and quarter 3 pan out in terms of the geopolitical tensions.
Sayyid Wajahat Saab is asking again, what has been the price increase of paracetamol API in the last 2 to 3 months?
So in the last 2-3 months, I think there have been some prices coming in from China, and percentage wise, it's increased by about 300-400 rupees, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, but but I would just like to comment here that the situation is changing day by day, and from I think if the question is more around what is the impact on Haleon, I think that's what really it means. I think also what is also important is to note that Haleon, alhamdulillah, is managing some reasonable inventory levels. Plus, we are also using our cash to mitigate some of the cost pressures that we are getting on paracetamol. So I think that's the other bit that I would like to just chip in.
And is there an Advil launch on the cards?
I think that is absolutely on the cards. Any and every imported or global portfolio that we have and that you've seen in our journey also as Haleon and globally, it is all in the cards. It is a matter of when, and we're in the process of getting a lot of global portfolios for the future, and Advil is definitely on the cards also.
Sayyid Wajahat also asks, is CAC1000 API an oil derivative?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
Mr. Fuzel Shoaib is asking us to please repeat the API mix import versus local.
It's 60.
I hope that's clear. Sayyid Wajahat asking, what is the sales target of Centrum for next year?
I'm unable to share the sales target, but I think my ambition is, of course, to continue to grow a high double digit, and that's the ambition that we carry.
Hamza Hassan Sahab is asking, where is CAC1000's API sourced from? Is it available locally?
It's not local.
Thank you. These are, I think we've covered all the questions on chat. There were some repetitive ones. Yes, okay. Mr. Shankar Talreja asks, what is the update on the vitamin policy, which CEO Saab mentioned in the last analyst briefing?
I think I answered this question 2-3 times, and I think the industry is really excited about this also. We are working with DRAP on this, and hopefully we get to hear some good news in the coming months. Fingers crossed, we are doing all our efforts.
Thank you.
We have a hand raised.
We have a hand raised. Abdul Muiz Saab, let's see if you're able to unmute yourself. I hope you can.
We have another question on the chat.
While he is unmuting himself, Adil Saab is asking, you cannot manufacture nutraceutical in pharma facility. Then why is manufacturer in Haleon facility? Sorry, I'm not Very
So
clear.
आपका सवाल मुझे समझ नहीं आया। मेरा आई थिंक जो आप पूछना चाह रहे हैं वो ये चाह रहे हैं कि अभी हमारी फैसिलिटी किस तरह पॉइज्ड है। सो हमारी जो फैसिलिटी आज वो फार्मा फैसिलिटी है, रैप अलाउ आपको करता है कि आप फार्मा फैसिलिटी में एक और सेक्शन बना के एक अलग मशीन पे कर सकते हैं। That's the new SRO that came in 2021. Unfortunately, that allows a lot. That still allows for a lot of capex investment to be able to get the benefit out of that, and that is what we are talking to the regulator to allow for the future to see if we can manufacture within the same pharma facility.
Adil Saab has clarified his question. Why is CAC manufactured in Haleon's facility?
CAC is a pharmaceutical. It's registered as a pharmaceutical product.
So it's not a nutraceutical and hence it's manufactured with us. Right, so Abdul Mohit Saab is now posting his questions on the chat. As per IQVIA, the volume growth was 1%, whereas you mentioned that it was 7%. Can we assume the rest of the growth came from institutions?
Yes, your assumption is absolutely correct. There is a big number of volume that we did through institutions. Also, it was a good business that was done.
Thank you, Kavi. Abdul Mohit Saab, if you've got any other questions, we are awaiting those on the chat. Nothing else from his side. Adil Saab is asking volumetric growth that can be in 2026. I believe that's been covered. But
we've covered that part. I think the conversation is how does the macroeconomic point out? We at the industry level will see a low single-digit volume growth. Depending on how the inflation and the macroeconomic volatility pans out. If the prices continue to rise and the price increases go beyond a certain threshold, then you'll see, of course, a hit on volumes. And that's usually what we've seen in the history. When the pricing is high, volume usually goes down.
Shankar Talreja asks, what would be the contribution of government buying in total revenues of the company?
8 to 10%.
So 8 to 10%.
I hope that addresses the question. Adil Saab is asking how many other variants of Panadol account for, how much do the other variants of Panadol account for the total volume of Panadol?
So, majorly, our portfolio of Panadol Plain is the biggest top hitter in the portfolio. But of course, over the years, what we've done is exponentially increase the portfolios, be it Extra Night, Extend, and Ultra, which is just being launched. So we continue to add portfolios, and the idea is to spread the sales of Panadol across the portfolio.
I'd just like to add here that from a contribution perspective, Panadol tablets contribute around 75% and liquids contribute around 25% of the portfolio.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Any other questions? Give it a couple of more seconds. Yes. Miss Deepa is asking, what is the total contribution of institutional sales to total? What's the margin on that? I believe it's lower than OTC.
That's correct. The margins are, of course, lower, and that's the industry practice. The contribution, as I mentioned earlier, is around 8 to 10%. Thank
you so much. I think we can perhaps move on. Looks like there are no further questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate all the great questions that came across and really appreciate everyone's time and thoughts. Okay, sorry, there is another question, last one before we close. Will dividend frequency remain annually?
अभी तो annual नहीं है, अब तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह तकरीबन हर quarter में है. So of course it depends how the profitability pans out and our capex requirements. But फिलहाल के लिए the management intends to maintain on similar trajectory.
Thank you. Mohammad Imran Saab has a suggestion that we should be proposing to IQVIA that it should be available publicly. Their information should be available publicly. And well noted.
I think the point of view is IQVIA is not DRAP mandated. So if a manufacturer does not want to give the data to IQVIA, it will not be there. So I think when you look at the IQVIA data, take it also with a pinch of salt when you take the category views also, because it does not incorporate a lot of manufacturers. And a manufacturer can decide not to give the whole industries all of it data that it does. While we and usually the MNCs provide all the information, it's not the similar state when it comes to local manufacturers. So take the IQVIA data with a pinch of salt also, unless and until DRAP mandates that 100% of data should be given to IQVIA.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that covers all that we had to cover. Oh, we have more questions. Another
Sure.
question that's coming up. Let's take it, please. Any idea when Panadol will be introduced for menstrual pain?
Absolutely, the team is working day and night on that, and inshallah, when we're closer to time, we will give you the heads up, and we will let you know that it's about to be launched.
We look forward to it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone online, everyone in this room, for this lovely session, and inshallah, look forward to connecting soon again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hafiz.
Hafiz. Love, वहाँ से end कर दो.